Hey everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. This will probably be the most boring video that I've ever made. I tried to think of ways to make this interesting, but every way that I tried to do it, it came out to something which I think for most people will be extremely dry, like something that you're not going to want to sit through for 5 minutes, let alone however long this is going to take. I think this is going to take probably something like an hour, I'm guessing. It's going to be a lot of setup for not much payoff. So you'll have to be really interested in computer programming to have any interest in this video. So most of you might just want to skip this one, and I understand if you do. That's fine. This is not a probably not a video for for most sane people. Anyway, so what are we doing here today? We are um, looking at how to make sounds with the AdLib card. Now, I don't want to go into a whole long history lesson, but basically, those of you who were playing computer games back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, remember that the Sound Blaster was, the big brand of sound card back then, which was the most popular. But before the Sound Blaster came out, there was the AdLib card, and the AdLib card basically just did. It was kind of like MIDI. It wasn't exactly MIDI, but it was sort of. It made instrument sounds. It couldn't really play digitized sound very well, but it made instrument sounds. Now, the AdLib card, it was arguably the first sound card for PCs, at least the first popular one, I would say. The AdLib card itself was based on a Yamaha chip. The Yamaha, it's technically called the YM3812 sound chip, but it's probably better known as the OPL2. But that was a Yamaha chip, which was basically the centerpiece of the AdLib card. So yeah, we'll just say that the Yamaha OPL2. There were also later OPL3 and OPL4 chips on later sound cards, but that's something for another day probably. So the AdLib card contains 244 registers which you can write to control the audio. And the reason for that is because the OPL2 chip has 244 registers. So basically, the AdLib card itself is really just an interface. It's like a front end interface for the Yamaha OPL2 chip. If you look at an AdLib card physically, it consists almost entirely of the one Yamaha chip and then just a few 7400 series, standard logic chips to handle glue logic around that Yamaha chip. So really, programming for the AdLib card is all about programming for the Yamaha OPL2 chip. So I'm not going to make a complete list of registers here. I'm not going to list out all 244 registers, but let's go ahead and start sending some of those registers. So what I'll do, let's see, let me go ahead and run debug. This is actually, I'm in DOSBox, and DOSBox does not come with debug or other standard DOS commands and utilities, but there's a program called Debug X, which is a pretty good clone of the DOS debug program, and you can download it for free online, and it runs, seems to run pretty well in DOSBox. So what I'll do is I'll actually just write values directly to the card, and I'll talk about what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So the way that you set a register on the AdLib card or on the Yamaha PL2 chip is fairly easy. Basically, you send a number first to port 388, and I believe that's 388 hexadecimal, not decimal. But so in debug you just say O and then the IO port number. So I'm outputting to port 388. And then after that, you just put the register number. You put the number of the register that you want to write to. So again, there are 244 registers to choose from. Let's start with register 20. And again, this is 20 hexadecimal, not decimal. So so there we go. I've just sent the value 20 to port 388. What that's done is that's let the AdLib card know that I want to write to register number 20. Now what I need to do is write to IO port 389 with the value that I want to write. And let's go ahead and send the value 1. There you go. That's it. That's how you set a register on the AdLib card. I've just set register number 20 on the card to a value of 1. That's it. It's really that simple. Just two output commands. And actually, the whole practice, like the whole act of sending sound, the whole act of working with the AdLib card is really just this. It's literally just writing to port 388 and 389. That's it. That's all you do. First, you output the number of the register you want to write to, and then you output the value to put in that register. This is the whole thing. This is going to be the whole video. That's literally like going to be the whole entire video. So, yeah, now that you know that, there's not much to do except explain what the registers do. And like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them. A lot of the registers have duplicate functions because the AdLib card has, I believe, 9 channels, meaning it can play up to 9 different tones or notes at the same time, which is cool. So I'll just go ahead and go through the registers for one channel, one of the 9, or is it 10 channels? I don't know. I think it's 9. Anyway, whatever. So register 20. I've written to register 20. What is register 20? Register 20 is one of the operators for channel 1, for the first channel. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, each channel also has 2 what are called operators. I believe the 2 operators correspond to the carrier wave and the modulation wave. If you look up FM modulation, you know, there's a carrier wave, which is the basic waveform, and then there's the modulation wave, which modulates that, you know, that waveform, and that's how you get FM synthesis. I think that for each channel, one operator is the carrier and one's the modulation value, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know that that's true for a fact. That's just something that I seem to recall reading somewhere, but I couldn't find any authoritative source on that when I tried to look it up recently for this video. So anyway, so what is register 20? Register 20, as all registers on the AdLib card and on the OPL2 chip, it has 8 bits. You know, it's a byte. It's a byte-sized register. So the first bit, the leftmost bit, you know, I guess you'd call it bit 7, controls whether amplitude modulation is on. So I haven't really experimented with this much, but I guess, as I understand it, if the first bit is on, then it's AM, amplitude modulation, instead of FM, frequency modulation. But we're leaving that off here. So a value of 1, let me just go ahead and type it out like that. So that's what that equates to in binary. You know, I mean, it's 1, which means the rightmost bit is a 1, but the other bits are 0. So the first bit controls amplitude modulation. So we're going to keep amplitude modulation off for this demonstration. The second bit controls vibrato, you know, which is sort of like a wavering kind of wobbly quality to the note. We turn that off as well. You can turn it on if you want. It creates a slightly different sound. It creates a, you know, synthesized vibrato sound, but we're keeping that off for now. The third bit is whether you want a percussive sound. I don't know that there's a clear definition of exactly what percussive and non-percussive means, but basically, as I understand it, if you don't want percussive sound, then the sustain level of the note is maintained until it's released. So one thing which is kind of relevant here, which I'm not going to explain in great detail, is in FM synthesis you have the attack, decay, sustain, release envelope. So attack is how quickly the note turns on, whether it just, bam, turns on like that, or whether it sort of sweeps up from, you know, from silence and sort of gradually becomes louder. That's the attack phase. And then I think, what comes next? Is it sustain or decay? I don't know. Then there's sustain, which is how long the note is held, and decay, which is how long it fades away. And then release is, you know, when the note is released, obviously. So bit 3 is set to 0. The third bit is set to 0, which gives a so-called percussive sound, meaning that the sound begins to decay right away after hitting the sustain phase. So it hits the sustain phase, but then it starts to decay right away. Whereas if we turned bit 3 on to create a non-percussive sound, then the sound would be sustained a little longer. Again, it's just a different sound. It's not really, I mean, you can use either one. It's just a difference in what it sounds like. So these are things that you can play around with if you want to achieve different sounds from the AdLib card. But we'll keep that off for now to create a percussive sound. The fourth bit is the KSR. KSR stands for keyboard scaling rate. If you turn that on, what happens is the attack sustained decay release envelope gets faster, it gets shortened as the pitch of the note rises, which I guess has some applications if you want to create certain sounds, but we're keeping that off as well. And then the last 4 bits of this register control the harmonic that sets which harmonic of the specified frequency is actually played. We haven't specified the frequency yet, we'll put in the actual frequency later, but basically we're setting the harmonic to 1, which means the actual specified frequency, the actual frequency that we put in later will be played. Otherwise, you could use these 4 bits to set different harmonics of that note. So the AdLib can actually do harmonics, which if you really master it, I guess it can sound pretty cool. I haven't experimented with it. Again, you know, all of this is more stuff for really serious, like electronic music nerds. It's not really so much about programming. It's more about how to do FM synthesis and how it relates to music. So it's more of a musical theory thing than an actual programming thing. But I'm not a professional musician. I have a vague idea of what some of these things are, but I'm not a music expert, so I'm just kind of explaining how they translate into bits in these registers. Anyway, so that's what the different bits in register 20 do. And there is another register which we need to set. It's register 23. So registers 20 and 23 are for the 2 operators of channel 1. It maps a little bit weird because it's not just like 20 and 21 are for the first channel, then 22 and 23. It's not quite that simple. You can look up online. There are guides online that tell you how the different offsets work. But basically, yeah, registers 20 and 23 apply for channel 1, which is what I'm going to use in this video. So we need to set register 23 the same way, and we'll set it to the same value. I'll use the same value as register 23. So we need to output to port 388, one output 23, to let the AdLib card know that I want to write to register 23. And once again, I'll write to it a value of 1. And that has the same effect as what I explained for all the values of the register 20. So moving on, what are we doing next? Next, let's do register 40. So I'll go ahead and say write to register 40, please. And what does register 40 do? I'll go ahead and explain what the different bits in that do. It's a little bit simpler. It has really only 2 fields. The first 2 bits, I'll go ahead and kind of symbolize it like this. So I'll say, there we go. So the first 2 bits are part of the KSL, key scale level. Previously I talked about the keyboard scaling rate, which makes the sound envelopes get shortened as the pitch goes up. What this does, the key scale level, what that does, it actually causes the volume to decrease as the frequency rises, which is an interesting effect. I guess higher frequencies may be less pleasant. You know, higher frequencies are sometimes perceived as more unpleasant on the ear. And so this is basically a kind of automatic scaling which filters out the higher frequencies. So it makes the lower frequencies louder, it makes the higher frequencies quieter. It's an interesting idea. I haven't really experimented with it. I haven't experimented with most of the things on the AdLib, in these AdLib registers, but in principle the idea is interesting. You know, if you like bass, or if you just don't want too many screeching, high squeaky notes, then you can maybe use that to dampen them a little bit. But yeah, that's 2 bits. So the value that you put in there will change that key scale level. And then the last 6 bits of this register are just the total level, TL or total level, which is simply the volume level. It really is that simple. It's just the volume. So, and it works a little bit counterintuitively. You might think that if all the bits are 1, that's the loudest, and if all bits are 0, that's the softest. Actually, it's reversed. If all bits are off, that gives you the loudest setting, and if all bits are on, that's the softest volume. So let's see. Let's kind of, what do we want to do here? Let's go ahead and, let's see, what did I do when I, just looking at my notes. When I programmed this, I used a value of 1F hexadecimal, which is 0001. 1111 in binary. So that means, right, okay, so I kept the key scale level off, which means that the volume does not decrease as the frequency rises, and I had the volume about halfway. So the total volume, I kept the most significant bit of the total volume to 0, but the other bits are on. So this is basically like right in the middle. It's like half volume. And that is, in hexadecimal, it is 1F. So, right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'll output 389 a value of 1F. And then the companion register to register 40 for channel 1 is 43. So there we go. So we output a 43. It's interesting. I have in my notes here that I output 0, which basically means that for this operator, we do not use the key scale level still, but the total volume is then the loudest. All bits 0 means that this operator has the loudest volume. I don't remember why I did that now. I think I might have stolen these values from some demo program that I saw on the internet. All of this, what I'm doing now, is actually taken out of a program that I wrote many years ago, and I don't really remember the rationale for that program anymore, but I think I just kind of stole the ideas for it from some article that I read on the internet. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Now we're going to do registers 60 and 63, which again both have the same format. They're both registers for channel 1. So let's go ahead and say output to 388. We'll do 60. We want to write to port 60. So the format for port 60 is fairly straightforward. The first 4 bits are the attack rate. So it goes from 0 to 15, 0 to F hexadecimal. So 0 is the slowest attack rate, and F is the fastest attack rate. And then after the attack comes the decay rate. And again, 0 is the slowest, F is the fastest. So we're setting here the attack and decay rate for these FM synthesis operators. What did I use? I used E4. Okay. Output E4. We set register 60 to E4 for no special reason. I think this is just a nice middling value. I mean, you could obviously change this to create different effects. I mean, yeah, if you want to get different sounds, different effects from your AdLib card, then go nuts and play with these registers and see what it does. I mean, you can do all kinds of experimentation. But this is, again, just a short demo. I say short. I mean, it's relatively short. It's, you know, considering the kind of depth that you could go into if you really want to get into this stuff, I think this is going to be relatively short. So now we're going to do register 63, and I'll output the same value, E4 to there. So we'll use the same attack and decay envelope parameters for both of those registers. Okay, what's up next? You might see a pattern here, and yeah, the next register is going to be 80. So let's go ahead and say we want to set port 80, and the format here is similar. So this one, again, is 2 sets of 4 bits. The first 4 bits are the sustain level, and the last 4 bits are the release rate. So with these 2 registers, we set the attack, decay, sustain, and release for that one operator of that one channel. So let's see, what did I use here? Again, you can use anything here. I'm just going to use something that was suggested in some article that I read. I used 9D. So let's go ahead and say we'll use 9D. And then again, as you might have guessed, we do the same for register 83 for the other operator on channel 1. So yeah, 83, and again, we'll use a value of 9D for that register. Now, that was a lot of setup, but guess what? We're done. That was all the initial setup that, that I'm going to do for this demonstration. And now I'm actually going to play a note. So to do this, you actually write to 2 different registers. And the reason for that is because, let me actually just quickly check to make sure. I just want to quickly check my notes and make sure that I don't say anything which is incorrect, because a lot of the information on stuff like this is kind of kind of vague, like it's not really very well defined. I mean, there is documentation you can find on the internet, but even that tends to be kind of incomplete or misleading or just incomprehensible. So let me just quickly make sure that I get the formats for these right, 'cause I'm going to try to explain these a little bit at least. Um, right, okay, so for channel, yeah, it looks like there are 9 channels. Okay, good. Okay, so what we have here for the different channels, we have registers A0 through A8 and B0 through B8. You want to set the A register first. So the mapping here is very simple. A0 is for channel 1. Pretty straightforward, right? So let's go ahead and say I want to set A0. But what value do we put out? Well, A0 actually contains part of what's called the F number. The F number, as far as I can tell, I don't even know what F stands for. I assume frequency, probably. It's really just a number defining the frequency of the note, because all notes are frequencies. For example, the typical standard in music today is that the note A on a piano keyboard, or not just on a piano keyboard, on any instrument, the note A is 440 hertz. That means a note of A produces vibrations 440 times per second. Unfortunately, the F numbers that you put into the AdLib card or the Yamaha OPL2 chip, they don't just directly map to the frequency. That would be too easy. It would be nice if you could just say, hey, number 440, and you get a frequency of 440. No, it's not that simple. You need to, as far as I can tell, you need to look it up in a table. Maybe there's a way, there's probably a way to convert frequencies into F numbers. Maybe there's a direct ratio between them, but I didn't bother looking it up. Basically, for this, let's go ahead and play good old note C. So for the notes in the so for the notes that we're going to play with the AdLib card, basically the F numbers are 3-digit hexadecimal numbers, and the A register here, which we're setting now, contains the last 2 hexadecimal digits of that number. So let's go ahead and play good old note C. You could start with A, but let's go ahead and do like middle C, right? So C has an F number of 2AE hexadecimal. So that means that we are going to put in AE into A0, because AE are those are the last 2 hexadecimal digits of the F number. Now we need to put in 2 into register B. So hold on, let's go ahead and write to register B0. And what are we going to put in B? So B contains the top 2 bits of the F number, the most significant bits of the F number. But actually, the format for register B is, let me go ahead and try to represent it here a little bit. The first 2 are just unused, so I'll say U for unused. They're not checked at all. And then the third bit turns the note on or off. So this is the really key bit. This one here, this is the master bit. This is the one that turns the note on or off. That's the crucial thing. The next one, I'll say S for switch. That's the one that switches it on and off. The reason I want to do that is because the next 3 bits set the octave. If you know about music, you know there are different octaves. So the octave is a 3-bit number. That means you can have 8 different octaves, because 3 bits gives you 8 numbers. So there are 8 different octaves that you can use here. And then the last 2 bits of this register are the 2 most significant digits of the 2 most significant bits of the F number. So what value did I use for this register here? I believe I used 2A, which in binary is 0010, and then what's A in binary? It's 9 in decimal, so that would mean 1001, I believe. Is that right? No, sorry, it's 10. Duh. A is 10 in decimal. So it's 8 plus 2, so it would be this. Okay, so this is 2A, so this is the number that we're going to use in binary. So the first two digits, or the first two bits are unused. Just leave them at 0, it doesn't matter. And then the third bit is 1 because we want to turn on the note now. We want to actually hear the note and not just imagine it. And then I'm using an octave of 0, 1, 0, so octave 2. You can use a different octave if you want. Doesn't really matter, it's just, yeah. And then the two most even digits of the F number. Remember, the F number for C is 2AE. So this needs to be a 2, and 10 is 2 in binary. So that leaves us with a hexadecimal value of 2A. So let's take it away. Let's go ahead and write to port 389 a value of 2A. And when I press enter, this is the big moment of truth, ladies and gentlemen. When I press enter here, you should hear a note. I don't know how loud it's going to be, so you might need to listen. You might need to turn the volume. So I'm going to go ahead and shut up and press enter. There we go. That was a note. That was C. That was the note C on the piano keyboard. Or, again, not necessarily on the piano, just on any instrument. So, and after you've played a note, it's good practice to turn it off, because otherwise it just stays on forever. And you can't play another note while this one's on. So just to have good practice, let's go ahead and turn it off. So we just set, once again, we set register B0, and we set it to 0. And you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, but internally the note is now off on the AdLib card, which means that we can play another note if we want to. And in fact, just to demonstrate that, I can type those last two lines where it went on again. I can say again, output to port or to register B0 to A. The note should play again. There we go, play it again. But if I try to do that right away without turning it off first, you don't hear anything. There's no tone. So you have to turn off B0. There we go. And now if we want to, we can play another note. So that's the basics of it. That's the basics of how you play a note on the AdLib card. And again, of course, you can mess around with the different registers. You can get different sounds. You can create different envelopes with, the attack, decay, sustain, release. You can get different volume levels and different octaves and F numbers, which make frequencies and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to go ahead and show off all of that. This is meant to be a simple demonstration, or as simple as I can make it. I mean, like I said, this is pretty dry stuff. We got the payoff for all of what we did now is one note, one single note. And I realize for many of you that might not be enough. Let me show you a quick way that you can, I don't know if this makes it simpler per se, but if you're using debug, this probably doesn't make it simpler, because in debug you can just use one line. You can just say output to this port number, this value. So in debug it's pretty easy. But if you're writing a program, what you probably want to do is make a subroutine to write to the registers. So what you would do, let's just start assembling in memory. This is pretty awesome. This is what you can do in DOS. This is one of the wonderful things about DOS, is you can just start putting stuff in the memory, and it will work. It's so easy. This is one of the nice things about DOS. Is so easy. You can just put anything anywhere and it will just work. Try doing this in Windows or any operating system in widespread use today. I mean, you can't do this in Windows, you can't do this in Mac OS, you can't do this in Linux. You can't just start writing to memory in any operating system today. But in DOS, man, you can just say, just put anything, like put it in address 500, 600, 700, whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So what I'm going to do is I'll say move AX, no, actually let's put it in DX. Put in DX the value of 388. And that's the first I/O port that we need to write to. And then let's say output AL to DX. So ahead of time, so what you need to do is set AL to contain the register number on the Yamaha OPL2 chip or on the AdLib that you want to write to. So ahead of time, you need to set AL to the right register number. And then let's go ahead and move AH into AL. And then we'll move, we'll change DX to 389. And then once again, we'll output AL to DX. So there you go. So now if we unassemble that, we've got a nice subroutine there. Yeah, so what you'll need to do is, before you call the subroutine, set AX. So AX will equal, or I guess make it simpler, we'll say AH equals the register number, and AL equals the value to write to that register. So you'll need to set these ahead of time. I mean, you can do this with just one instruction by setting AX, because AX, of course, consists of AH and AL together. So you can say AX equals, let me just say something like RRVV, and then the, so that means the first two nibbles are the register number, and then the second two nibbles are the value to write to that register. Actually, wait, no. I'm sorry. That's reversed. I got it backwards. I'm sorry. No, it's the other way around. It's VVRR. The first two nibbles are the value to write to the register, and the second is the register number, because first we send AL to port 388. So yeah, so it's actually like this. So okay, sorry. I mean, you could change the subroutine to do it the other way around. Doesn't really matter. So just as an example of doing this, I mean, I guess we're not actually going to run the subroutine here, so it doesn't really matter. But obviously, if you had a real subroutine, then you'd want to say at the end, which is here 58, you want to put in RET, a return instruction, so that it returns from the subroutine. There you go. That's a proper subroutine, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Just to demonstrate, I will let's go ahead and give this a try. I'll go ahead and set AX to be AE0, because A0 is the register that we want to write to first, and then we want to send AE to the register because that's the second two digits of the F number. So we've set the register, and now what we need to do here in debug, debug's format is a little curious if you've never seen it. First, you use P to proceed from some point in memory. Use an equal sign to indicate what memory address to run from, and then you type the number of instructions to run. Now you can see there are 5 instructions. There's also a return instruction, but we don't need that. We can just say run 5 instructions. So our subroutine is 5 instructions. So if we run this now, I know the output looks a little weird. It's a little confusing too, because at the end it looks like it ran the RET instruction, but actually no. What it's showing you is the next instruction that will run if you step through the next instruction. So it didn't run RET. It's saying that if we ran another, if we did another step, it would do the RET instruction. That's what that's saying. So it can get a little bit confusing. So there we go. So we've written AE to register A0 on the AdLib card. So let's go ahead and now, once again, send 2A to port B0. So we've set AX. Let's go ahead and call our subroutine one more time just to make sure that it works. Let's listen carefully. Yep, it works. Cool. Okay, and let's go ahead and turn that off. Turn off the note just to have good note hygiene. So we send 00 to register B0, and then once again call memory address 500 and run 5 instructions. There you go. Once again, you don't hear anything, but it works. So yeah, so if we wanted, we could input like a long string of data bytes for the AdLib card to process somewhere in memory, and just have the program, you know, put those values into the AdLib card, and that's how you play music. I mean, you know, with a fairly simple program, you can just write music for the AdLib card as a sequence of bytes. You just create a sequence of data bytes, and those are the bytes to send to the card, and that's how you write music. So it's fairly simple in a sense. I realize that it may not seem simple. Like, I mean, I did a lot of talking here. It seems like a lot of setup for just a single note to play. But I mean, really, all that we're doing here is writing to an output port or a couple of output ports. Um, and it's a lot harder. It's actually quite a lot harder if you are doing digitized audio. Um, which is actually something which, frankly, I don't really know how to do. It's not something I'm very familiar with. I wanted to learn it someday, but I haven't really gotten around to it. I still don't really understand exactly how it works. And digitized audio is a lot harder to get right because your timing has to be very precise. Whereas something like this, if you send the command to the AdLib card a few milliseconds off, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't necessarily change the human perception of the sound that much. But digitized audio, because it has thousands of samples every second, your timing really has to be precise. And if it's off at all, then you'll really notice it in the quality of the sound. So anyway, yeah, what I've often wanted to do is make something that actually records the values written to the AdLib card by various DOS games, because then you could see exactly what values are sent to the card to make the various sounds that they make. In an emulated environment, in a virtual environment like DOSBox, you can probably modify the emulator so that it records the values written to a particular hardware I/O port, and in that recorded data, you would see exactly what the game or whatever program sent to the AdLib card to make the musical notes play. But I always wanted to make a hardware solution. Someday what I'd like to do is make an actual ISA card, like get an ISA protoboard card. You can buy them online, and make like a hardware solution that records all the data which gets sent to ports 388 and 389. You can actually have two cards because these are actually writing to directly to hardware I/O ports. You can actually have two cards getting the data at the same time. In fact, some people, I haven't tried it myself, but I've read on the internet, some people have actually said they've tried this. You can put two AdLib cards or two Sound Blaster cards into the same computer and send AdLib data to them. And what happens? They both play at the same time. It's pretty awesome. Imagine that you have two Sound Blasters in your PC and you try to play something on the AdLib and both Sound Blasters play in parallel. Because again, they're both looking at that. They're both in slots that have access to the I/O channel, to that I/O bus, and they can both read the data that are sent to it in parallel. Again, it's more difficult. It's different if you're using IRQs and DMAs and things like that, which have to be uniquely assigned to one card, which is part of why that's a black art, which I'm really not, again, frankly, not very familiar with. That's a whole other kettle of fish. But I mean, something like this is by comparison, it's comparatively very simple, even though, again, I realize it doesn't seem very simple. I think that's about all I wanted to say for now. I wanted to wrap up just by showing a demonstration program. So we quit out of this for a second. If we go into my assembler here, let me show you a program. Let me show you the program which I actually wrote several years ago. That's this program here. So this basically does everything that I did in debug, but it obviously does it as a program. So here we are setting those registers for amplitude modulation and vibrato and the octave and blah, blah, blah. Here, this is the register. These are the registers for, yeah, exactly, for the attack and decay, and then for the sustain and release. There we go. And at this point, the preparation is complete. And what I did here is I actually played a C scale. So I put in all the F numbers for C, D, E, F, G, and then back to A, B, C. And then here's my subroutine to set a register, which you can see it's basically what I put in before. It's 6 instructions. So write to port 388, port 389, and then return from subroutine. And this one, because if you're doing this in a program, the AdLib does need a little time to recover. You can't just send it instructions at full speed, at the full speed of the processor. You do have to wait a little bit. So I put a little time wait routine here, which gives the card a little time to react before sending the next information. Yeah, and you can tweak these. Obviously, you can change how long the program waits. I think I might have made it wait too long, but I wanted to err on the side of caution. So, yeah. So this is the program, and I hope that it's fairly apparent what it does. If not, feel free to send me questions. If anybody actually is curious and wants to understand more about this, feel free to let me know. I will try to explain as best I can. But yeah, so if you go ahead and assemble that using A86 fmscale.asm, creates fmscale.com, and then if we run fmscale, I'm going to go ahead and shut up, and this should play a complete C scale. Let's listen carefully, and I will close my mouth for a second. There you go, and that's how you do it. So, and again, the timing could definitely be tweaked. You could make it faster. You can change the octaves. You can change the notes. You can change the sounds of the instruments based on the wave envelopes and volumes and things like that. But I'll leave that to you folks. If any of you are curious and want to experiment with this, feel free, and I'd be curious to see what results you get. But I think that's a good introduction. This is the basics. This is the baby's ABCs of how to make a sound on an AdLib card. So now you've seen how it's done, and if anyone's curious, give it a try. It's kind of fun if you find this kind of thing fun. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll go ahead and sign off for now, and perhaps we'll return to the subject in a future video and make more interesting sounds than what we've heard here. But yeah, like I said, I think this was a good introduction. Hopefully, maybe. All right. I'll talk to you folks later. Bye-bye for now.